So I thought we'd just start by asking all three of you to talk us through a recent project, a book that's either just come out or might not yet have come out, and to just describe how it came to you, how you chose a translator, what the editing process was like, whether you came across unusual problems, how you negotiated things with the translator, and publication, sort of pitching the book, preparing the book. Barbara, you want to start? Or?
Sure. I'm torn between talking about two different authors I'm really excited about. One's Cesar Ira, this Argentine, who I'm crazy about, and it's been really interesting because we've been bringing out, he's written like almost 100 books, and they're all very small, but to bring them out in enough time, we've been dividing them up between two different translators, both of whom are great, Catherine Silver and Chris Andrews, who's known here as the Roberto Bolaño, the New Directions ones. And then I also wanted to talk about Laszlo Krasznahorkai, who I'm in love with, and I just got this perfect translation from George Zerdes, which took 10 years, but it is really incredible. It's a really incredible translation. And I just wanted to say two things about that. So you're working on it, and it's very small little things, and I was saying to Drenka today, like, the really interesting thing about translators is the better the translator, the more they don't mind you bugging them. You know, because you feel like, here's your nice blanket, and then you give it back to you with fleas. You know, it's like this little tiny, like, me. But they really don't mind. If they're really interested in the language, they're really, it engages them. And so I wrote back to George, and I said, gee, I actually like these weird things like metal roads, because there's a spider thing in Satan Tango, and it's like a spider web. He goes, oh no, that just means paved. It's like a British word for paved. And I was like, let's keep it. It's so weird. And then I said, and what about this really weird thing that I don't know and I can't figure it out, where you have these weird words like S-P-B-A-R-I-N-G. And sparring, and there was another couple of variants of this. He goes, oh, I'm really sorry. And I made a global change. We decided to make the word in instead of bar. Oh no, I made it bar instead of in, so I took all the INNs out and I put all, in all of those I put in bars, so that should be spinning. And you have to do a global search. So that was really great. But he's a genius, and he's a poet himself, and he's just amazing. But then with Cesar, the only thing I wanted to say about him is it's been really interesting to see Chris and Katie, in that they both are really brilliant translators and really great. But one kind of does like a plush velvet pushed backwards, and Katie's, that's Chris. There's like a velvety feeling to them. And then Chris's is like a little bit more like tinfoil, or, I mean, not tin, like silver or something, very beautiful. But it's the same voice, but they're completely different, to me, registers. And so those are the things that come to mind. And both great, they're all three fabulous translators.
We just go over. Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but I really just came here to listen to Barbara and Drenka. So I'll try to keep it short. I also just love microphones. I feel like Anna Gasteyer in the Saturday Night Live parody of public radio. Talk really softly. A book there are so many to talk about. I guess I should talk about kind of in a homage to one of you, to Peter Blackstock, who's in the red sweater over there, sorry. Talk about a book that he told me about. It's a Macedonian novel, of all things, that I'm publishing next fall. It's called Sigmund Freud's Sister, and it won the European Union Book Prize. And it pivots on the fact that as the Nazis were descending on Vienna, Freud was granted an exit visa to London, and he was allowed to list people to take with him, and he listed his wife and his wife's family and his doctor's family and his dog but he didn't list any of his four sisters. And this is a novel that is told from the perspective of Adolfina, who wound up dying in the concentration camps. It's incredibly powerful. And I first heard about it from Peter, and I didn't really do anything with it. I mean, it sounded intriguing, but I thought, Macedonian novel, how am I going to get people excited about that? And then I got a tip, then I heard about it again within a week from a former Penguin employee who grew up in Macedonia and moved to HarperCollins. And she urged the agent, who's French, to send it to me, and I didn't know. And I had very little. I mean, I had a summary, and I had Peter's enthusiasm. Peter read it in Macedonian, and Elena read it in Macedonian. And so it was a rare kind of coming together of factors. And then I called on Michael Henry Heim, the great scholar translator at UCLA, who knows 13 languages and is teaching himself Chinese now. And I asked him if he knew Macedonian, and I thought for sure, and it turns out he didn't. He doesn't know Macedonian. But he put me in touch with the chair of the Department of Slavic Languages and Literature at the University of Toronto, and she was skeptical initially, skeptical about the pitch, but then agreed to read it. And the next day, I got a very effusive report from her. So I just decided to take a risk on it, and I had 30 translated pages that I liked, but who knew what the rest of the novel would be like. And then I got the draft of his translation in a few weeks ago, and read it, and I just feel incredibly lucky to be publishing this book. Did I address the questions? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Who translated it?
Oh, it's translated by Christina Kramer, who is the chair of the Department of Slavic at, she's just stepped down from the chair, but she's in the Department of Slavic at the University of Toronto. There wasn't much of a litter to pick from, as far as translators of Macedonian goes, but she was apprehensive about it. She's never done she's done some translating. She and a group of scholars translated this Bulgarian, 19th century Bulgarian novel. It was one of the first things I came across when I came to Penguin 5 years ago, and I loved it. I was dying to publish it. It's called Baiganyo. It is the name of the character, the title character, and it's kind of. I was thinking about it as a kind of, forerunner to Borat. He's this kind of slovenly Bulgarian guy who travels all around Europe and thinks he's every bit as sophisticated as the French. And he just has all these misadventures. But I couldn't figure out how to publish it. I would have needed, I don't think I didn't go to him. I went to Sacha Baron Cohen and asked if he would write an introduction. And that's really the only way I would have been able to publish it at Penguin. It wound up being published by the University of Wisconsin. So she has done translation, but she hadn't ever done something like for Penguin, so she was apprehensive, and she's done a beautiful, beautiful job.
Two most recently released books of mine by established authors here, Scenes from Village Life by Amos Oz, and The Dark Cemetery by Umberto Eco. And of course, they are established authors, and they are on their merry way. And earlier this year, however, we published two authors, both from Eastern Europe. One is Leach's second novel for us by David Al-Bahari, and On the Road to Babadag, a travel book by Andrzej Staszuk. And both are established in their own countries and in Europe. Well, how did these authors come to us? I was aware of, had been aware of al-Bahari's work for a long time through my Yugoslav connections and Macedonian too. And when Goethe and Meyer came my way, I somehow felt that was a book that might make an impression, and it did. And it received great critical attention. And then when the second novel, Beatrice, was announced, al-Bahari was invited instantly to the Pen World Voices 2011, which was in April of this year. So, how does one publish authors who are new to this country? We share the cost of translation. We share the cost of translation with Harville in England, and also received a subsidy from the Yugoslav government. So both books were translated by Ellen Borsage. And then Staszuk was originally brought to my attention by Peter Eichen of Serpent's Tail, a novel, White Raven, which I thought was brilliant, and we were ready to publish it when it turned out that this book was 100 copies of it were distributed by Serpent's Tail here, and so we couldn't publish it. So we then took his next major novel, which was 9, and we published it, I would say, successfully, in that the reviews were excellent, and the author came to this country, and now we have Babadag, which is a marvelous travel book, and Bill can tell you more about it. In more ways than one. We had a little issue there with the translation, so it required help. And Bill was there to provide it. So, well, it's not always easy to establish authors in this country. One has to do a lot of work.
That's for sure.
We all agree. Yeah.
Do you want to ask a question?
Well, I have a question, Barbara. I love this metaphor of the velvet, the crushing in either direction in terms of a translator's register. And it makes me think that there's a particular aesthetic of editing, but there's also a poetics of editing. That, I mean, I'm assuming there's a kind of poetics of editing. And I'm curious, I often think of editing as being a close cousin of translating. And I'm curious to know from all three of you, have there been moments where you felt that your work was a creative art, in a sense, in the way that writing is? Or can you think of moments that were where the editing process took on this kind of creative import, as opposed to, I mean, I think people think of editing as being a craft as opposed to being an art, make that generalization. So I'm curious to know, I just love this image and this feeling that one has about the translator's work, and how does that inform your work as an editor? That's a little general, but bringing it.
As a jeweler, I've always hated this like, the artisan versus artist thing has always seemed to me like kind of not a very interesting distinction. But maybe, I mean, I've been at tables where it's like high art or low art, and it's kind of like, eh. You know, it seems to me like it's one thing. You know, it's like we're all trying to make something beautiful, or something that you're going to really enjoy, or something incredible. So for me, the distinction is just, I don't really get where it comes from exactly, though I understand that there's a difference between, like I always say to translators, like, look, your name's on the book. You know, I understand this is your translation. I'm just going to give you the best advice I can give you, and this is what I think. And then if they demur endlessly, like, on the other hand, our name's on the book too. It's like there's like a line, but I try to, as far as possible, say, you know. And every once in a while, I don't know if you have this. I bought a Pig and a Poke. You know, like you buy something based on a sample chapter. I don't read any other languages, and so I'm kind of hopeless. And I study French too. Anyhow, like we had one novel that came in that was just like unbelievably bad. I mean, you were just like, oh no. You're like, oh no, what is this? And even though in even the sample chapter, it was an interesting Turkish author, and I thought, it's a little bit like a Calvino knockoff in a way, but it's okay. It's still interesting, and it was this very important modernist gay author, and I was like, really, and then it came in, and I realized the poor person didn't speak English, you know, and I like bought a whole translation from this person. So, you know, yeah, then you get creative. But generally speaking, no. Mostly, you've got a really clever, incredibly gifted translator. I mean, we really try only to work with people that are incredibly good, because otherwise you're in really deep weeds. I mean, you're lost in the weeds, at least for me. And so, as much as possible, I try to work with people I've worked with before. And I know it sounds really narrow-minded, but you know that Margaret Costa is going to do, you know Susan Bernassi is going to do, you just know what you're getting. And you can trust them, and when you have questions, they'll be able to contextualize them and answer them for you. And with people who aren't that good, it can be really, really horrible, and you can really be lost. And then you've got to bring in somebody from the outside, and then it gets like a triangulated relationship, and it's like, ah! It's just like every bad thing that ever happened to you. And so, to answer that, the less I have to be creative, the better for the book. Like, it's better if the translator and the author are the creative people. And once I get creative, like this book that I'm talking about won an award, and I'm like, it has nothing to do with the original book. That was just me fixing something. So it's better, I think it's better if the editor isn't too creative. It's better if we just do our job and sheepdog it. And in my opinion, it's best.
But it's interesting, you posed the question, which is it art or craft? Well, it all depends on what you get. Sometimes it's art and craft, and sometimes it's just craft. If it's a really excellent translation, you go over it and great pleasure. You make a few things, suggestions here and there, but sometimes one has to do a great deal more as to now. Then it's art and sometimes drudgery.
Yeah, I think, I feel like the art really comes from, you know, the interaction with the author and the translator, and kind of, it's the art of persuasion, really. The art of, you know, winning this person's trust and convincing this person that your instincts, you know, that he or she might do well to follow, your instincts. I haven't had an experience of editing a novel when I felt that I was bringing some kind of artistry to it. And I'm hard pressed to think of a book that I've edited, a translation that I've edited, where I've edited the translation so much as the novel. I can think of two examples. So one would be this Macedonian novel, and the other would be a Chinese novel. Let me talk about the Chinese novel because it kind of echoes, I think, Barbara's experience with the Turkish novel. I bought it on the basis of no pages. I bought it on the basis of a detailed summary, and it sounded just so good. I mean, it's a Chinese novel called English, and it's about a young boy growing up during the Cultural Revolution who falls in love with the idea of learning English and sees English as a kind of portal out of the Cultural Revolution China. So it reminded me of, I thought I could sell it. It reminded me of Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress, and it also reminded me of the play The History Boys. It just had a very commercial setup, and I adore the agent and have implicitly trust her taste. And then I solicited 5 sample translations, and all of them were flawed, and I picked the one that I felt like I could edit. And it was alarming initially to read these 30 pages, these 30 page samples, because I was like, uh-oh. And then the book came in, and I was like, uh-oh. And it's just, the book was there, the shape of the book was there, the elements were there. It was written in such a kind of treacly, sentimental, faux lyrical way. So I just kind of stripped all that out and just told the story. And there was hardly a sentence that I didn't rewrite, because the translators didn't really write clean sentences. They just kind of gave me the story. And the book was 400 pages in Chinese, 400 pages in French, Italian, all the other languages. Our edition was 300 pages. And I didn't cut any plot elements out. It was just all interstitial. So I feel like I edited that novel, and the translation, to some extent. But it was really the novel that needed work.
You've had that experience too.
Yeah, where the work is on the original work, through the translation.
But to come around to the beginning of my point, the author was like, sure, do whatever you want. I just want to be published in English, and I want the book to be successful. So that wasn't. There wasn't a lot of art I brought to that negotiation. And maybe that's the art of it that or maybe it's just having Penguin behind me, that convinced him that we can do no wrong.